our structure is set up that, we bring in people with little to
the same thing here. Many other factors are considered whenever we're suggesting that we cap a school. We ensure that a school is meeting the legislative requirements for K-3 class size. We look at whether a school is implementing a new program or if they're anticipating relief by the opening of a neighboring new school or renovation. We evaluate how a school's core facilities are able to support it, because if the cafeteria is too small, it's really not a great idea to keep moving more students into a particular school location. We also look at whether or not a school has exhausted all means for being able to accommodate their classes, and if a campus has exceeded their current trailer recommendations. And as I mentioned, being able to add additional trailers is really not an option at this point in most situations. However, I do want to point out that our CIP, our capital improvement plan, still maintains a line item to help us address needs for our trailers. For this upcoming 2024 fiscal year, I believe that amount is going up to about $2.8 million. So it sounds like a lot of money, but if you'll recall, the last time we had to move about a 7-classroom unit, it cost us about $1.5 million. So we can wipe that amount out pretty quickly. So as has been requested, and I'll reiterate a few times today, we will be coming back with the trailer 101 refresh at the April Facilities Committee meeting. As part of our annual forecast process, you've heard me mention this a few times, we also meet with all the municipalities. Long-range planning and student assignment oftentimes get calls from our principals, and lots of people are like, oh my God, there's another neighborhood that's going up next to my school. Where are all these kids going to go? Or am I going to get these kids? Can I go ahead and get these children for my school? We have that information as part of our annual process and meeting with the municipalities. We get all of their residential information for both short-term and long-term development. We know whether or not it's age-restricted, whether it's age-restricted with some limitations, meaning sometimes students can come for a 30-day period or that sort of data. We gather all that information. We know when they're supposed to issue the first certificate of occupancy, basically when we could see the first students on the ground at that particular facility. That information can change throughout the year. People come in, they kick the tires with the municipality to see if they purchased X piece of property. Would the municipality consider letting them build 3,000 homes there? We gather that information, as well as throughout the year. There are a few municipalities that submit school impact letters to both our GIS department, student assignment, and long-range planning to simply say, this is a consideration, what does your capacity look like? So they've included that as part of their approval process, which is great for us. Our schools have some flexibility in how they assign teaching spaces to different classes. You've heard us mention quite a few times what the limits are for K-3 legislation. So at our elementary schools, they typically have the biggest challenges, because you have to keep in mind, if we overload our lower grades, those classes are now your first grade and your second grade and your third grade as those cohorts age forward. So it's really important that we keep a close eye on what those limits are and how they're actually impacting each individual school. This is the list of the current capped schools for elementary, middle, and high. Since 2018-19, we've averaged anywhere from 15 to 20 capped elementary schools, usually about 1 to 2 capped middle schools, and 2 to 3 capped high schools.
Question for you.
Yes, sir.
On that list,
Yes.
you said that we tried not to have cap schools as a permanent. How long, what's the longest a school, I mean, if you happen to know?
I do, and Mr. Carosa is
Should be
guessing
Mills-
that it's Mills
Should be Mills
Park.
Park Middle in 2012.
And actually, I believe it was capped and perhaps uncapped a couple times because our list now says
Okay.
2016-17.
Got it.
It's been quite some time. It's
Yeah.
certain western areas. Schools.
Got it. Thank you.
And keeping in mind too that that Western Wake area, the high growth, the speed at which they're growing and continuing to grow impacts our ability to cap and up.
Right.
Here we've identified the capped elementary schools and their attendance area. What you'll note on this map is that the majority of our capped elementary schools are in that Western Wake planning area, with just a few exceptions. It's important to keep in mind, the residential growth in that area still remains strong. And as we've concluded our annual municipal meeting, we're expecting it to continue to remain strong.
I'm going to jump in one more time. Because, by the way, this is how, for
Yes.
people who do presentations, this is kind of how we're going to do it in facilities. So if you have questions, speak up.
Go for it.
Do municipalities, do we emphasize to them, building around these cap schools, what it's going to do for families or to families? Do they have a clear understanding, or do we need to, I know we need to continually send them this message, but do they understand when they're building around these cap schools that what they're doing to families?
I would say that that actual discussion is not part of our data collection process, but the majority of the municipalities that we work with, we've worked with them for so long, they are very aware of what
Okay.
the current crowding situations are. And like I said, we oftentimes, and I keep looking back because Ms. Pulliam is directly behind me, but we oftentimes get additional letters for additional development throughout the year. We can't stop them from building, and I think for the most part, most people don't want the development to stop. But just letting them know, this is the impact, and this is where you more than likely may not have seats at elementary, you may have some seats available at middle, you may or may not have seats available at high school. So we'll give them the breakdown at each level.
Does the county require new development to inform people who are buying in that a school might be capped? Do we know?
I don't think that's a
Requirements,
requirement.
but we do have it posted on our address lookup feature, and we've shared it with schools. So if parents reach out to schools, they would let them know.
Would it help us to perhaps ask municipalities or the county to?
So we
As
have in
part
the
of it.
past shared with them the links to our data.
Right.
So that they can get it at the source, and so we'll continue to share that with municipal managers and their staff to say, here, if you've got any questions or concerns, or any parents have any questions or concerns about the school system, here's where they can go get that information. And I just want to add, our collaboration with the town of Apex is probably at its best of all the municipalities in the sense of addressing crowding, because they do ask for an impact statement. And so they send us information about a new development coming online. We'll provide feedback for them, for their board to consider as they go through their process.
Yes, okay. Yes.
I mean, I wonder whether there's some kind of possible interaction with the people that does like Zillow or Trulia, that comes up with the listings, MLS listings, and they often put like the information about what school that house is going to go to. Is there some way to include some link to our school district website to kind of know people can get actually easily link to that information?
So I'll expand upon that. We often also share our information with realtors and ask that they present the correct information for families as they're looking for purchases. It's hard because I believe their staff may change, and so they're not always coming back to the main source, but we have provided them all of our links over the years as best as possible to say, here, if you want accurate information to update your websites, here's where you can get it. It's just a matter of them updating their websites on their own. But we are still aware of that and still trying to fix that.
Should we have that a school is capped on their website?
On
The school's
Yeah, like Apex Friendship High School.
website,
Well, I think that's,
I'm just
Just
curious
because
as
of-
how we're informing.
Right. One of the challenges is just because a school is capped does not mean they're capping out at every grade.
Yes.
So I think where we have landed in the past when we had that conversation, is that it's best for families to reach out to a school. Because, like I said, if we're capping out at kindergarten, we may have seats at 5th grade. But if we say the school is capped, then that gives the impression that no one
No one's
can
getting
attend
it.
that
That's
school.
not correct.
Okay. All right.
And to extend that, then that gives the school staff an opportunity to talk with that family and still try to capture them as a Wake County student and say, hey, even if we don't have room for your grade, we can help you with the overflow school and tell you how far away that is, or we can help you with other application processes, and we can ensure you're placed on the wait list in the proper order.
Got it.
Because the longer you wait to call, the lower you get on the wait list. So it's just best if they call the school directly so that all of those things work as efficiently as possible in support of the family.
Got it. Cool.
One other thing I also wanted to share is that we also participate in it used to be monthly, now it's about bi-monthly, municipal planners meetings that are led by Wake County government. And in that meeting, there are about 48 people from across the county. And by all means, we are typically doing updates and sharing information whenever we're getting ready to start our forecast process. Because again, everybody's staff has continued to change, so we want to make sure we get out ahead of that and make sure people know when we reach out and we're asking for all this information, this is why we're doing it. And so I think that process has been very good, has worked really well and been beneficial for both sides, because they've also been able to go back and tell their boards, we've been working very collaboratively with the district. So I think it's worked good for both sides.
Thank you.
Similar to the elementary map, this is the middle school map that shows the capped middle schools and their assignment areas in red. And again, the primary focused capped area is in the Western Wake region. Our high schools, again, similar situation with a slight exception in the northeast area. After we review the recommendations, now we want to review our recommendations. Based on our crowding data, staff is recommending that the cap be removed from Apex Elementary, Highcroft Elementary, and Mills Park Elementary. And I know there's probably some eyebrows that are going to go up. It's like, but Apex is still pretty crowded. Right now, we are anticipating that Apex Elementary will realize some relief with the recent approval of the enrollment plan, which affected the assignment areas, and this upcoming fall opening of Woods Creek Elementary, which will be multi-track year-round, and also the moving of Bauckham Elementary back to their base campus, and they, at their main campus, also have realized additional capacity availability. Highcroft Elementary will continue to realize relief as a result of the recently approved enrollment plan. We have had questions about upcoming residential, so similar. We've had a lot of questions about Highcroft. So again, all that data for all those new residential units have already been baked into our forecast, and we have access to that information. Mills Park Elementary will continue to realize relief with the recent approval of the enrollment plan. As I mentioned a second ago, overflow schools also create challenges for our transportation group. So we are, as part of the recommendation, we are also recommending that we change the overflow for Parkside Elementary to the more proximate Carpenter Elementary. Both schools will continue to realize relief as part of because of the result of the recently approved enrollment plan, as well as the upcoming fall 2024 opening of Woods Creek Elementary, and again, because of the opening of the renovated replacement Bauckham Elementary with additional capacity.
Can I interrupt?
Yes, ma'am.
Susan, this is for you. Those were included in the enrollment plan, right? These changes,
Oh, yes.
as part, like,
No.
Oh, no.
Not the
These
change.
follow along behind.
Okay.
So since you have approved the enrollment plan,
Right.
these openings have become available for us to be able to take advantage of. Because Carpenter will have a slight reduction in their base population starting in the next school year because of the assignment change. And then if Mills Park is no longer feeding overflow students to Carpenter, that would make a more suitable overflow school for Parkside students. It's
So let
much
me,
closer to the campus.
let me rephrase, make sure we're saying the same thing.
Sure.
Without having it in front of me, I'm trying to remember, because we did have a section about some schools, I'm thinking about calendar option.
Which would
My
have an
apologies,
impact
I'm
on
thinking
some
about
of these
calendar
as well.
option.
Yes.
Yep.
Never mind.
Can you, go ahead.
No, I was totally,
I think you're in the right place. The domino of impacts of what you approved in the fall has created some space.
Yep.
Although it's small.
Yep.
In some of these areas for us to create some shorter commute times for families that are overflowed out of Parkside.
Stress on a long bus ride from Parkside to the Adams Carpenter significantly cuts that back.
Yep, I'm good.
So the impact on students who have been sent to the overflow schools, are they returned, do they have options, or they automatically get back to their base?
They will be given the option to return.
Okay. How, is there a typical number that ends up doing that, or, oh, wait, Susan, you got something? Go ahead.
We're in a unique situation with the Parkside students that are overflowed to Adams in
Yeah.
the sense that Carpenter won't officially realize that extra space until the fall.
Okay.
Or July 1, I
Right.
should say. And so we just can have some internal conversations on how best to support the families that are currently assigned to Adams. Would it be better for them to come back to Parkside? Would it be better for them to leave and stay at Adams? Would it be better for them to transition to Carpenter? So once we get your feeling on whether or not this is an acceptable recommendation, then we can put together the specific set of rules for the families.
Got it.
But either way, it's to support them and
Sure.
give them the best option for their students.
And one of the things, I can't remember if I mentioned it earlier, but I know it's towards the end of the presentation. After the board approves capping and uncapping recommendations at the upcoming board meeting, we will have a meeting with all of the capped and overflow schools to kind of review and answer questions. We've had a few meetings thus far, but we'll have a meeting with all of those schools that are impacted so that we're giving consistent language for them to share with the families.
I just want to welcome Ms. Maffey. I particularly appreciate her wisdom on capping, as she's been doing this for a while, so I'm thankful she is here.
Do you need an opinion?
Not yet.
Okay, good.
In a little bit.
I just got here.
I'm going to
Let me
give you a
think.
minute. Go ahead.
Okay, so the other recommendation that we're making is that we change the overflow for Panther Creek High School to the more proximate Green Hope High School.
Because I had a couple that were on capping as well, on the slides.
So a recap, so not a whole lot of changes this year. We are hoping that we'll be bringing back more for the recommendations next year, as we are anticipating about 6 schools that would be opening, providing additional relief. But at this time, we are recommending that we remove the cap at Apex Elementary, Highcroft Elementary, Mills Park Elementary.
Oh, my gosh.
This is why we invited, this is why we sent you.
Changing the overflow.
This is like Christmas.
Susan brought the gifts for Christmas, so. Recommending that we change the overflow school for Parkside to Carpenter Elementary and change the overflow of Panther Creek High School to Green Hope High. And we continue to monitor those crowding situations throughout, so if we need to come back to the board at a later date to say there's been a huge shift and they're giving away free tickets to move in over in this area, and
Yeah.
we've got an influx, we'll bring that information back to you for additional conversation and consideration. So if approved, this would be our list of 2023-24 capped elementary, middle, and high schools. And that number you see would come down just a little bit.
So for approval, it'll come to our next board meeting?
Yes,
Okay. Okay.
Yes, sir. I believe it's February 6th
Yes.
is our goal. So depending on what changes you recommend tonight, we would come back to work session. But if there are no requests for changes, we'll simply come back to the board meeting on the 6th.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, I mean, you said, you know, shifting from Adams to Carpenter as the overflow. I mean, what, do you have plans to utilize Adams in a different setting, as an overflow? Or?
Well,
We recently reassigned a significant neighborhood from Dillard Drive Elementary to Adams Elementary, and the stability transfers are fading out, and so more and more of those students will be filling up into Adams. So we feel confident that it'll be okay with its current base assignment, and it does serve as a calendar application school still for a few areas, so we have the ability to fully operationally utilize that facility with its base and those other.
Ms. Madden?
I think with, I'm glad to see that it's changing, the overflow for Parkside Elementary is changing to Carpenter. I think it's much more proximate for families. I think my gut feeling on this is to have folks move over. If there's room at the base school, I think everybody who's capped out wants to be at their base school ultimately. But I think if families choose to stay at Adams, providing their own transportation, I think, you know, allowing them to stay.
So we
I
always
think
offer.
if we're able to do that. Are they still, no, they would get a bus because they're capped to
So
Carpenter.
when you're
Okay,
capped out,
yeah.
you get a bus.
Right.
And anytime we call students back, we give them the option. You can stay where you are, you just don't get district transportation. Give them that option so that they have that stability on the line.
Is that what
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
So we'd like to now bring in the third lever that we generally discuss when we talk about dealing with crowded cap schools in our district, okay? And so of those three levers, you've got reassignment, capping, and then calendar discussions. And I want to stop and kind of go back and just give everybody a bigger picture of what happens with the district. This isn't just a one-off decision that we make. Our year starts next month when we bring to you the forecast, the annual forecast. And it actually starts well before that in the summer, fall,
Yes.
when we go out, Ms. Rory's team goes out and meets with municipalities, collects the data of the projected growth coming in the next 5, 10, 20 years, okay? Then we take that information, we analyze it, we come up with the annual forecast that we'll present to you. That helps us determine what items need to be included in the capital improvement plan. Do we need to look at renovations? Do we need to look at trailers? Do we need to look at building new schools to help deal with the growth? That all then goes into Ms. Pulliam's reassignment plan. Where do we need to open new schools? Where do we need to reassign because we don't have new schools opening in that particular area? Where do we have calendar options that we can utilize to help manage growth? Now we're getting to then capping, which we're presenting to you today. Where do we still have growth that we cannot control that we need to place an enrollment cap? After we've exhausted all of those options, we're now left with a calendar conversion, okay? And it would only work for schools that are on the traditional calendar, converting them to a multi-track year-round calendar to gain the additional capacity. As you've heard in the presentation, we have a K-3 class size legislation that significantly hampers our district's ability to house students at their most proximate school, okay? You know, you've heard the stories over the years. We lost about 9,000 seats when they converted back in 2017, I believe it was, somewhere around that area. That was a significant blow to our district, okay? And so from that point, we've continued to play catch-up. On top of that, you also have the desire to renovate some of our schools. Those are the same dollars that are used when you're building new schools, so they're in competition for those dollars with each other. So capping has been a solution that we've used more often over the years. In recent years, we've tried to scale that back, right? Because the transportation resources are just not there anymore. So now we are looking at reassignments, and we're now introducing calendar conversions as a potential solution to deal with the overcrowding. Again, the data comes from municipalities. We don't control how much they build, where they build, when they build. So we are at their mercy. And this just continues to show like that we're playing catch up year after year, because the data we get for a reassignment plan is always from the previous year, because you're starting to collect that next data's forecast in that same time frame that we're discussing the assignment plan. So to just give you a history, we had shared this prior to many of you coming to the board, that the meeting before you were sworn in. But this is just a history of year-round schools. We started out as a choice mechanism, right? And it was part choice, part capacity assistance. We had some year-round schools that we brought on that we were trying to find different ways to entice families to apply to different schools to help manage crowding in certain areas. Then it got to the point where we needed them, right? And we were using them more. As we opened new schools, we would open them as multi-track, but also making them application only. Okay, so it was a choice mechanism. Then we got to the point in 2007, and we had to mandatory convert 46 schools, or 22 schools, to the multi-track year-round calendar. That was, we were dealing with 7,000 to 8,000 students growth per year projected. And that was significantly hampering our ability to provide students a seat at their proximate school. That did not go over well with the public, and rightfully so. It's very difficult to understand, and I think we've done a good job from that point to now. This is not something the school system is doing unto families. We're being reactionary to the information that's being shared with us. Okay? And we have limited resources, and those resources we need to utilize them as best as possible. And utilizing multi-track year-round schools, especially at the elementary level, utilizes that capacity so students can go to their closest school. We do have the opportunity to provide busing. Okay? As we get to the 24-25 school year, we'll anticipate to have 64 schools on the year-round calendar, 33 on the multi-track, 16 on single track, and 15 on modified. Okay? We are asking you, and I think we've heard about this in conversations, is a commitment to, are we using multi-track for capacity purposes? Are we using it for choice? Can we use it for both? And I think depending on where we are in the county, we could use that. In certain areas, if we need to compete with a private school that offers track 4 only, and we're losing market share in the area, we may suggest that we want to keep a track 4 only school in that area to try to compete with that market share. And I think that's good. We just don't get the extra capacity gain by using multi-track, by using single track or modified. Okay, multi-track, 4-track, multi-track is what gives you that capacity gain. So as we start to look at the purpose of year-round schools, we're going to speak with the public, get their feedback. We're going to use the thought exchange. We think that's a very good tool in getting feedback. We'll pose a question, we'll share that feedback with you. But as you start to get into these conversations, you're going to hear from families, you're going to hear from school staff. If they're at a multi-track year-round school and they really like that calendar, kind of like, well, similar, it's opposite, traditional to multi-track when we dealt with it during the assignment plan with Pleasant Grove. The people who are at the school are happy with the calendar, okay? But for operational purposes, we're going to need to seriously consider converting some schools. And so you may not get 100% of feedback that's in support of a staff recommendation. Several years ago, when we converted several schools, the Westlake Elementary, Westlake Middle, Banks Road, and Middle Creek from multi-track to single track, we actually got a lot of support from the community to make those changes. It was coming out of COVID, and they really liked it being on the same calendar for instructional purposes, staff development purposes. But it's not always going to be that easy when you're getting, that support. So we just want you to be prepared for, as the recommendations come, it may not 100% be that everyone's in concert with the staff recommendation. But it is needed, because we just don't have any other resources to deal with this. The only other resource we can continue to do is capping, and we've seen where we've gotten to this point with capping long term. Okay? So as we look at calendar conversions. Now, it could be for overcrowded purposes. You have traditional calendar schools where we've gone through the CIP, we've gone through reassignment, we've used capping. We just have no other resources. We may make a recommendation to provide more seats through multi-track year-round. But inversely, you're looking at where do we have areas where we're using multi-track year-round that we may not need multi-track year-round. And we'll bring conversations to you as well about that, because there are certain places where we have underutilized multi-track year-round schools. And specifically at the middle school level, it's really difficult to run a multi-track year-round school that's underutilized, because you're not earning enough teaching positions. So therefore, the district is having to fund the extra positions that they're not serving. And on top of that, in a time where we're having a hard time recruiting high-quality teachers for all of our subjects, you're now asking certain schools to have teachers on 2 teacher teams where they're teaching 2 subjects. So that makes it even harder for principals to hire a teacher who's going to teach 2 subjects, let alone 1 subject. So we're going to be bringing some conversations to the public about how do we handle as a district having an underutilized multi-track year-round school. Now, the easy solution, some people will say, is we'll just assign more kids there. Well, what happens when the surrounding schools are not completely full, right? And the things that we've seen over time, just allow people who want to go there. When we've had open choice, and there's data nationally that shows when you offer open choice, that people will self-segregate themselves, okay? And our controlled choice model is something that's viewed nationally as a successful model, and we want to keep that.
No, I mean, he can finish and I'll, yeah. Go ahead, Glenn.
So I would like to prep the board for, we are going to spend this spring reaching out to families to discuss how do we continue to handle overcrowded schools in certain areas, how do we handle underutilized multi-track year-round schools in certain areas. That data will then use to help drive our upcoming student assignment plan, to make recommendations to the board for any particular calendar changes, and it'll also help us with any potential reassignments that may or may not be needed.
Is there, when you go back to the CAP schools, and you think about multi-track year-round as a solution for them, do we use data points where a school has been on a CAP school for 8 years and we see development and we have to just go ahead and do that, or is it still a conversation?
We've not done it yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we just started analyzing a list of schools that we've gone through. Okay, so what does the forecast say? What can or can't we do in the capital improvement plan? Trailers, renovations,
Okay.
whatnot. And so we're just starting to do that analyzing to then create a list of schools that we just don't have solutions under our current levers that we've used that we'll then need to bring to you to start making some new recommendations. All the while, when you talk about making some school calendar conversions, you know, we've always worked with a K-8 alignment model as much as possible, and we understand that. But it's not operationally efficient in certain areas, so we may bring to you some suggestions in certain areas where we're looking at 6-12 alignment, okay? So just trying to prep you for future conversations.
So my 2 questions are, with regard, for the sake of this discussion and anybody that might be listening, can you confirm that taking a multi-track year-round school to a modified calendar, because the modified calendar is relatively close to a year-round model, people like it, but we cannot do that because
The state does not allow us, the law.
I think it's important for the sake of conversation, because we're all always talking to a parade, right? With newcomers here, and, you know, we get asked that frequently enough that I think that's important to remind the public that we're not allowed to do that. When you convert a multi-track to a single track, does that mean multi-track to a traditional calendar, or is it a little bit different?
So single track is, generally we've utilized track 4
Yes.
in our district. So when you have 4 tracks in a school, track 1, 2, 3, and 4, we'll condense everybody onto one track, track 4.
And so tell us what track 4 looks like compared to traditional or modified, you know.
So if you're at an 8-14 for a multi-track year-round school, and just throwing out numbers here. When you condense that down to a single track elementary, that 814 would typically drop to about 616 for the capacity for that particular building. So it's a pretty nice drop.
Yeah, and the calendar would be a late August, a late July start. That goes
similar
all
to
year round. So
modified.
It's 9 weeks on, 3 weeks off, whereas a modified is 10 weeks on, 2 weeks off
Okay.
throughout the whole year. So the same number of school days as a student who's on the traditional calendar.
Right.
Same number of vacation days, teacher work days, all the same. But just at a different, just spread out over the course of 12 months instead of 9.
And not with regard to capacity, but let me ask while it's on my mind, are restart schools allowed to do modified, or they're also excluded?
Restart schools have calendar flexibility.
Okay,
They do.
all right, thank you.
So I wanted to clarify the 6-12 calendar alignment conversation, just because you never know who's listening. What we mean by that is that it may be that the K-5 school is multi-track year-round, and that the 6-12 would be traditional, not a traditional K-5 and year-round, I just.
Thank you for clarifying.
For clarity.
Yeah.
That's just to say that where we need to use capacity because of the K-3 class size legislation, we might be increasing that space where there's a K-5 multi-track year-round that feeds into a traditional middle and then onto a traditional high school. That may become more new.
And isn't there a classroom size factor into whether we could use it as a multi-track, in terms of being able to accommodate the multi-track system?
You're saying the actual square footage of a room. In the length of time that I've been here, the sizes of the classrooms have gone up. They've started to come back down. And then a few years ago, we brought to you a request to increase our general ed classrooms by 50 square feet in order to accommodate more of the manipulatives, more of our flexible furniture, and those sorts of things. The actual capacity in the room, until you get to 4 or 5, that's where that's really impacted. So if you look at a school like Washington Elementary, your 4th and 5th grade classrooms are, I think they are about 650 square feet. Whereas if you look at one of our newer schools on Parkside, their 4th and 5th grade classrooms, I want to say, are about 900 square feet. So what you can do in those classrooms would be impacted. And a Washington, we may simply have, their capacity model may show, and this is not their exact number, I'm not pulling it up right now, theirs may show 21 students per class, but a Parkside may show 24 or 26 students per class.
And to add on, what really helps us with deciding if the facility can manage multi-track year-round is less about the square footage of the classrooms and more about the number of classrooms per grade.
Correct.
If I only have, let's say, 2.5 classrooms per kindergarten, there's no way I can use that space and convert it into a multi-track year-round. But if I think that the minimum is 3 or
It's,
4.
well, it's a little bit more than that, because Olds.
I meant for a kindergarten, for a school to be considered, I have to have a certain number of kindergarten classrooms so that I can rotate in and out of those spaces. That's really what determines whether or not it can be converted, plus the actual square footage of the individual classrooms.
So we often hear the argument of how our enrollment has dropped. So as we're talking about crowding, and, the narrative is out there that our enrollment has dropped, because it has, what is the reason that we're looking at this when, if you lost N number of kids, you must have all of these spaces?
One thing I would say is really important to keep in mind, when we bring the forecast to you, you'll hear me say this a million times, the difference between our membership, or our PMR2, our Principal's Monthly Report, Monthly 2, and our average daily membership versus our actual enrollment. When we bring the forecast to you, that information is impacted by attendance violations. So if you're in violation of the 10-day rule, during month 2, you're not counted in that number. So when I bring to you, we had 159,995 students counted as part of our ADM for budgeting purposes, we may very well have had 162,000 students enrolled in Wake County Public School System. So the thing that it's always really important to remember, and the part that really affects the capital program, is that we have to provide a seat for every child that's enrolled. So we can't do, let's pull a card or pull straws to see who gets a seat today. We have to provide seats for the number of students that are enrolled, regardless of whether or not they missed 11 days and are now in attendance violation.
And I think it's important to note, some of the areas that we've traditionally had available seats are now becoming our projected areas of growth.
Yes.
So those seats will be taken over time. So it's not like we can just turn around and say, okay, we're going to do a massive reassignment, sweep everybody west to east, and fill those seats. Then we won't have the seats available for the projected enrollment that's expected to come.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
So we're just going to give you a timeline of our next steps.
And thank you so much for those questions. So assuming if we don't have requests for changes, we will bring back to the February, I believe it's the February 6th board meeting for you to vote on approving the 2023-24 capping recommendations. And as I mentioned earlier, if approved, those recommendations would become effective immediately, and they would remain in effect through the beginning of the 2024-25 school year until we come back to you again January of 2025. We are going through we'll go through the annual process of reviewing the steps and processes with all of the CAP schools and the overflow schools. That happens in the spring. As was mentioned a few moments ago, we will be coming back to you with the 2023-24 membership forecast, again, which is affected by attendance violations, and some general information about different things that are affecting our membership, whether that's anything dealing with interest rates, whether it's dealing with our current live birth rates. We'll bring all that information back for your information and consideration.
Can I add just one piece to that? And just to give you a little context, historically, the difference between our ADM, the average daily membership, which has attendance violations, and our actual enrollment on the books is generally about 1% to 2%. So for our district, that's roughly, 1,500 to 3,000 students at any given time.
It jumped quite a bit during the start of COVID, so
Yes.
that's where we began to see some real fluctuations.
And as you see students taking more days off for mental health purposes or whatnot, that affects our average daily membership, which affects our ADM, which affects our funding from the state.
Alrighty. I'm sorry.
Please.
And then we will come back in March to bring the 2024-25 for projections. And then, I kept saying back, popular demand, Trailers 101, we're going to do a refresh on that. But as I mentioned earlier, I don't want anybody to get their hopes up and say, we're going to go wipe out a whole bunch of them. We don't have the funding to do that, but we're continuing to monitor that process. And then, of course, Mr. Slavic's group still maintains those trailers. So we'll bring back, as the trailer team, an update on that, because that team is broad between student assignment, long-range planning, maintenance and operations, risk management, you name it, and they're on that team. Then we'll also come back and bring you updates on the feedback. Mr. Carosa mentioned a second ago that we're going to go through the thought exchange to get our families' input on potential calendar changes. So we'll bring that information back to you this spring. And that concludes our presentation, and if there are any additional questions.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Appreciate you. FDNC?
Okay, so
I'm sorry, I think we had asked other questions. Anybody else? No, we're
So
good.
we're good with moving forward
That's
with
what I was
the
gonna
say.
February recommendation?
Yes.
Board? Okay.
Thank you so
And
much.
any board members not here as they're paying attention, I'm sure, can reach out to you if there's any issues.
Okay.
Certainly.
Maybe
Thank you
call
so much.
Mr. Haggerty and Mr. Swanson specifically, since their schools are going to be impacted by the,
This is why we have
Changes.
Ms. Mahaffey.
Certainly.
Okay.
Thank you.
no problem.
I think it sounds something.
Give me 2 seconds and I'll switch it.
I was going to walk the dog, but he'll be okay.
It's too cold.
It's fine. Got my layers on. Yeah. Figured that out.
Yes.
Look at that.
Brown knows the superintendent. How y'all doing?
Doing well, thanks. How are you?
Who's going? Me first?
I'll
Dave?
start.
All right, Mr. Burnett.
Okay. By the way, so Elizabeth Sharp is on the program. She's not here today. She's out sick. So I'm going to do my best to Elizabeth Sharp. Shane Webster is here just in case I'm not good enough on that, and he might be able to help with some questions if I can't. Then we have John Bevan and Tony Champion for presentation. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to present these project updates and the space standard updates. So last month we set the stage and teed this up for the specific to the space standards that we're attempting to right-size the affected spaces. Some spaces will increase in size, some spaces will decrease. We'll also be listing projects that are underway in some phase or another, or that will soon start. Last but not least, please ask questions as needed during the presentation. We certainly don't mind. I'll start off with a review of the data collection process used for adjusting the space standards. Ratio Architects was asked to compare the current Wake County Schools high school space standards with Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools and with NCDPI space standards. We met with Elizabeth's group. So if I say we, that really means Elizabeth's team, met with our academic stakeholders and started looking at where their individual program spaces could be adjusted, meaning we met with the Media Center group and specifically looked at media centers. We looked at other areas like that with those teams. They made site visits to new schools, and they made site visits to recently renovated schools. During those site visits, they spoke with school staff and they spoke with students regarding how the spaces were being used, what was working, what was not working, and again, these are how we make those adjustments. So they also looked at furniture layouts in the spaces to confirm that the recommended adjustments will support the user needs, meaning you'll see where we're going to talk about offices. We know what the office furniture is going to be. We can lay out that office furniture to where it meets all the access requirements. We can then fine-tune the square footage of that space. These were the recommended square footage adjustments. Again, some spaces got larger, while some spaces got smaller. To help you read the chart, if you look at that first column on the left, you'll see elementary school, you'll see classrooms, and then under that, you'll see kindergarten. So kindergarten classroom square footage was 1,050 square feet. It is now proposed to be 1,100 square feet. So that, in that particular case, the space got larger. Middle schools, it's specific to like the science classroom and shared lab space item. Science labs are expensive space. Lecture space is not as expensive. We use the lecture space much more than we use the lab space. And this approach is to design science lecture classrooms and design science lab classrooms. We won't need as many lab classrooms because they aren't used as often. That's a savings about 1,500 square feet, and it also saves money in plumbing and casework. That's just one example. Another highlight is removal of locker commons. So in the middle school, that's a reduction of 2,500 square feet. At the high school, that's a savings of 3,000 square feet. And any questions? Just
I
jump
got
in.
a question real quick. Do we know if any students, for whatever reason, need lockers that we need to retain?
So these are specific to locker bays or locker commons.
Right.
Shane, are we keeping a small amount of lockers? I think we are at the high school, but
Yeah, the high school will retain some lockers for athletics, and of course, we have some lockers for the music program. But we sent out a survey to we surveyed the whole county and had results back. And the results that we got in our survey basically telling us that they really don't use their lockers. And so that's where the basis of the decision to remove the lockers for the school was made, based on the survey we received from teachers and students.
All right, so did principals were asked as well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And last at the bottom, you'll notice the square foot adjustments. It's non-assignable, space. That's, we call that net to gross. That's really area for corridors and wall thicknesses and things like that. That's not program space. So as you reduce square footage above, there will be an adjustment to the non-assignable space. So that's a little bit of a given on that. You make your administrative offices a little bit smaller. That corridor that serves them no longer needs to be as long, as it is. So that's a good example of that. Next.
Ms. Maffey?
One of the documents that we used to be able to access, and maybe we still have access to it, I haven't looked in a while, was the, like our space standards. Like it was this big 60, 80 page document, and very technical, and I probably understood less than I'd like to admit. But for me, it always helped me kind of see what goes into a school, like all of the things, and I was better able to ask questions like, why is it this way, and that's kind of how I learned, like, first and kindergarten need to be on the first floor, these are the schools that are required to have a toilet. And so I'm just wondering if that's something that can get sent to us so we can look through it, because I always found it helpful to see what it was, and not that it really changed much from year to year, but it also had things like, I believe, like different athletic requirements for the high school and what was going to be our new standard, and I remember we've changed that from time to time. So.
We still have that. It's a good question. We still have that. It's right now we're going through a revamp of that, and actually I'll talk to that in just a bit. But so that is underway. We have a consultant that's helping us. That is a long process. It'll be many more months, in process. So, and you will be seeing.
Because we used to give input into what we'd like to see change as a board.
Right. So, if you're familiar with the values workshop that we've talked about, hopefully you all have heard about that. That's coming up. That's part of that process, and that's more of a component of the sustainability of that for that process. But that is part of it, and so that particular item's coming up at the end of the month, and so yes, we do hope that we have board participation, in that and in other areas.
Thank you.
Could we get the current document sent to us?
Yes.
Okay, that'd be good. Thank you.
This particular slide converts square footage to dollars, and it totals up the dollars for elementary school, middle school, and high school. What we used as the dollar per square foot was $400. And if you look at that bottom line, that's total expected for elementary, middle, and high school. That is real money. That is a lot of money, especially these times after COVID, where the budgets have just been crushed. This is a step in the right direction. So this is the space standards part. We're going to move on to John's part, if there's any other questions on this. Yes.
So there have been talks about, the additions of vestibules. Is that included in the square footage for vestibules?
So I would say that the standard has a vestibule in it. So we aren't proposing an adjustment to the vestibule.
It's all already included?
That'll be in the standards. That'll be in the design standards. And with that, we'll go on to John's area.
Okay, so I just want to provide you a quick update on the PREP, SNAP, as well as mobile projects. We'll talk about projects that are currently in construction, and then we'll talk about projects that are in design and their status. Next to each school, you'll see either a P or an S or an M in parentheses. That denotes the funding. So PREP, SNAP, mobile, kind of self-explanatory there. So there's a project that we're working on completing at Apex Friendship High School. It's a bleacher repair project. We had some erosion underneath the bleachers. It's at 98%. A little bit of work left to do. There's some grass that needs to be laid. It's the wrong time of year to do that, so that'll happen in the spring. And that one will wrap up. Partnership Elementary, we had some stairwell repairs to do. There's a larger project afoot to actually replace those stairwells, so we stopped the work that we were doing, put them in a state where they're usable, and we're closing that particular project out. The expansion on that project is ongoing. It hasn't been defined completely yet. Zebulon Middle School, we replaced some scoreboards there. That one's in closeout, so it's wrapped up. Carroll Middle School, the bus loop didn't have any illumination in the bus loop lighting, so we put a program together there to put bus loop lighting in. That one's complete. We're just in the closeout phase. Rollsville High School, the softball dugout installation was a FAC mod that was assisted by PREP funding. We did matching funds for this and put softball dugouts at the Rollsville High School, so the school paid for a portion, we paid for a portion there. Those are done, they're complete. Just finishing up the closeout there. SCORE Academy, this was a SNAP project. We put a new facility over in northeast Wake County. It's at about 95%. There's some minor punch items left to do, but for the most part it's done, it's occupied, it's being utilized. Barton Pond, the shade structure that we added there was for special needs students that were photosensitive. As of last week, the final pieces of that project were put in place, and now it's in closeout. Next slide. Green Hope High School, we paved the fire lane over at Green Hope High School. The school had requested that we come in and pave the gravel fire lane. They used that for folks with disabilities for drop-off at the door. So that project is complete. There's some minor punch items left to do there. Nightdale Elementary School was a fit and finish improvement project. Was in two phases. So we did the interior. There was an atrium as you walked into the front entrance that used to have trees growing in it and dirt and that kind of stuff. That's all gone now. Put new flooring in, new paint, cleaned up the inside, and now we're finishing up on the outside. There's a little bit of fencing left to do, so that one's almost done. The Early Learning Center is the pre-K building at Middlebrook Elementary School. We're having a ribbon cutting ceremony there tomorrow. It is effectively complete. It's occupied. There's punch items left to be done, but the students are occupying it, and we're moving forward with finishing that one up. The classroom renovation at Durant Road Middle School was taking two classrooms and turning it into an agricultural classroom, so adding space for their agricultural programs there. That one wraps up. Tony's life cycle team is in that building also doing fire alarms and HVAC renovations. So there's a little bit of that coordination that needs to finish, and then that one will be done. Brassfield was really the first PREP project that we did a couple years ago in phase 1. Now we're in phase 2, and this is really at the entrance of the school. So we're adding a vestibule. To answer your question there, it is complete. There's some doors that need to be replaced and that kind of thing around the outside of the school, but we're just about done there. The water bottle filler project is an ongoing project. We're at about 65%. That's going pretty smoothly. We're just knocking them out as we can get to them and get them done. We have a contractor on board, and that one's actually going pretty well. Central Services has a parking lighting issue similar to Carroll High School. This is really for our transportation folks where the parking lots are really dark. They're showing up at 5 o'clock in the morning and they're having a hard time, between safety concerns and just general walking from one point to another. So that project actually received NTP and starts construction next week. So that's what's in active construction right now. Projects that are in design, Fuquay-Varina Elementary School will be our second really PREP renovation. So we're going into the school and we're doing a major renovation inside. Adding a carpool loop on the outside, we're modifying the dining room, we're adding ADA capabilities in the restrooms, and while we're there, we're doing in conjunction again with Tony's team some HVAC work. We're upgrading and installing a sprinkler system, which the school does not have, replacing the fire alarm, and those kind of things. So it's in design now. We're anticipating NTP over the summer. It will involve swinging the kids out of the school while we're doing the work. There's space available at Hilltop Needmore, and so we're going to move the kids there while this project goes on, and then the intent is to finish over the summer of '25, put the kids right back in the school in the fall of '25. Smith Elementary is a fit and finish renovation, so it's a go in and do some painting and some floor renovations and those kind of things. That one bids here in the first quarter of this year. Southeast Raleigh and Centennial Middle School are both slated to get canopies on their bus loop. Those are in design. We'll bid those over the summer. Neuse River Middle School, adding football bleachers there. The design is basically done. We're looking to bid that here in the first quarter. Rollsville High School, Marcel alluded to earlier, this is a mobile project. We're adding 6 single classrooms up at Rollsville High School. That one bids next week, and so that will be implemented over the summer. Yes.
Can I ask real quick, what does that mean, that the 6 single classrooms? Is that a mobile unit or?
That's correct. 6
Okay.
single
Okay.
single mobiles.
Okay.
So we'll add 6 classrooms to the school.
Okay.
Northwoods Elementary has 2 projects going on. There's a greenway that runs adjacent to the school, and the town has asked if we connect that greenway back to the school. So we're working now with the town to figure out exactly what that's going to mean. It's got to go through a wooded area. We did a design several years ago, a feasibility design, if you will. So we're submitting that to the town, and we want to get their feedback and see exactly what it is that they want us to do to be able to implement that. The second part of the Northwoods project is there's some building settlement around their conference room and around their loading dock. We did a feasibility, had an engineering firm go out there and make sure that the school is safe to occupy in its current state. It is safe. The next phase there is to put together a repair project and shore those areas up and then fix them on the inside. Rollsville High School has an additional project going on. The auditorium lighting is an early phase or an early edition LED, dimmable LED system. It was not robust and it has not survived. So we're going in there and going to replace that for them. Alston Ridge is also slated, similar to Neuse River, to receive some football field bleachers. Mount Vernon, K-8 program, we're going to put some fencing up around the school. This is a safety fencing initiative. This is the students often will exit the campus when they're not supposed to. So this will keep them from leaving when they're not supposed to leave. It does involve the City of Raleigh granting us a variance for the installation, so we go in March to a hearing with the City of Raleigh to see if we can get the variance that we need. If not, we may need to move their softball field slightly to be able to accommodate the fence. There's also some lighting we're doing internally and then putting a moving partition in a large area to provide 2 separate classrooms if they need them. West Cary Middle School has a drainage issue at their softball fields, leaving ruts across the softball field. We did a feasibility look at it. Right now we're working on getting a survey done, figure out what the elevations are, and then we'll put a design together, look to bid that over the summer. Another fit and finish project, this is at East Cary Middle School. Again, these fit and finish projects are flooring, painting, some new office furniture, that kind of stuff. They're not major renovations, but they make the appearance of the school refreshed, right? Lufkin Road, we're installing a CTE kitchen, so they have a single CTE classroom that's in a regular classroom-sized classroom, and then another classroom that's off of their administrative area. So we're moving those 2 classrooms together, and then they're going to be separated with a learning kitchen for the CTE program. While we're there doing that work, when this project was initiated, we called it a security vestibule, but really what we're doing here is the school already has a vestibule, but the current design standard is such that you enter from the exterior doors and then you are really forced to go through the office to enter the school, unless you have badge access to walk through the inner doors. They have the vestibule, but they don't have that pathway through the office area, so that's what we're doing with the vestibule. We're adding a door from the vestibule into the offices to control the traffic. Apex and Heritage Middle Schools, their band rooms have to not go into a whole lot of detail, they reverberate terribly inside. And the acoustic signature in there is really, really poor, and it wreaks havoc on the band directors. So we've done some studies, we've got some improvement design underway, and we're looking to bid that and get those put in for those folks. That's a long-awaited improvement for them. The tech services team, what we're calling the Fix-It shop, is where your computer goes when it's broken and they need to work on it. These are workspace improvements, so lighting, tables, furniture, that kind of stuff. That one's getting ready to go out to bid. Broughton High School is a SNAP project. This is a longer-term project. We're working in conjunction with real estate, putting in a softball field for Cary High School, which they don't currently have, but it will be right adjacent to Fletcher Park, which is owned by the City of Raleigh. The city of Raleigh owns part of that property, so there's going to be some moving of property lines, if you will, re-encumbering of areas. We're also going to install a practice field in that area. So real estate's working through all those details. That project doesn't look to bid until next summer. Just want to get it on the screen, though, because we are looking at that, working on it. Cary High School, this is another project we're doing in conjunction with Life Cycle. The lighting portion of this project is being handled by a grant. So we're going to replace all the stadium lighting with LED lighting. The grant's paying for the lighting and for a majority of the installation. It is under, I'm trying to think of the right word here. We're under a little bit of the gun to get it done because the funding has to be spent by the end of June. So unfortunately, that's going to necessitate taking the stadium away from the high school around the 1st of April.
You can, that's going to be a new, that's going to be talked about later, so you don't have to get into that yet. 'Cause I've got a
Okay.
couple
All right, well, there's
questions.
been some feedback about it.
Yeah.
It's just the schedule and the timing of.
No, I
of the
appreciate you
grant-
bringing it
grant
up.
requirements. Following the stadium lighting project, and almost concurrently with it, we'll be working on replacing the track and doing some bleacher repairs. Those are life cycle projects that we're partnering with Tony to work on. And then at Hillburn Academy, bus loop, putting a canopy in at Hillburn Academy. Same thing that like we're doing at Southeast Raleigh and Centennial campus.
So just two questions. The acoustical improvements,
Yes.
is that just because they are old, or is that something we're evaluating in our new builds now as to make sure we don't have to do improvements in the future?
And so these came in as requests from the schools.
Okay.
As a fact mod, and when we looked into them, we realized this is beyond a fact mod. They wanted to put some acoustical absorbing things on the walls and those kind of things. And actually, at the time, I was a PM, and my response was, well, let's have somebody come in, an acoustician, and measure the space, make a recommendation, and let's go measure it again and make sure that the improvements actually work. It's easy for you and I just to go throw some
Right.
stuff up and say, oh, it's great, put carpet on the floor, it'll be good.
Right.
So that's what we did. We worked with an acoustic expert, did extensive measurements of both of those, and they made some recommendations, and so we're incorporating those into the design. Now, as far as new construction, I can't answer that one.
Different designs,
Okay, got it.
different volume, so it's all, I don't know the specifics on those two
Right.
locations, but you wouldn't expect that to be typical and
Okay.
standard.
Okay. The last thing about the Groton softball field, are we assuming or making assumptions that those plans are somewhat of a done deal already? That they're, I know they're going to, that would be Upper Fletcher that they're talking about, I assume, if you're
Upper and
familiar.
lower. So the softball field will be right there at the top, right adjacent,
Right.
almost adjacent to the school that's across the road. The practice field is down into the park, down where the current, I think there's like a T-ball field.
But the city and Fletcher Park have agreed.
Real estate is working in conjunction with the city of Raleigh
Okay.
to put it together. There will be a joint use agreement on the practice field, is my understanding. It will be for us to use during school hours, and then could be used by the city of Raleigh during after hours. But I would need real estate to really weigh in and give you accurate information.
Okay. Thank you.
So
Okay.
that's-
Yeah, so just for my benefit and for people who may be listening, teachers, students, parents, if there are any kind of things that are deemed, inadequate in terms of the, what is the process by which we bring this to the attention of
Right, so they use the facilities needs portal that's on the FDNC webpage. Click onto that, they can put all their particulars in there. They can select it as either a SNAP, PREP, or a FACMOD project based on what their understanding is. But once they come into our office, we review and make sure they're in the right bucket.
and who does that?
So that comes through Elizabeth's team.
No, I mean, who puts that into the system?
Oh, the schools do, the administrative staff at the school.
So typically, every year, bookkeepers are trained on the facility needs for process. So that's a yearly process. And then we looked, in the last 6 or 12 months, we looked over the last 2 to 3 years, and I think we had 90% of our schools that have utilized the facility needs portal. I think that's pretty impressive. That data is impressive, and we think we built a lot of new schools in the last 2 or 3 years. So they were not having any need. So the point I'm trying to make is, the information is out there, schools are using it, and we have the data to show that, as I said, almost 90% of the schools have utilized it.
I just want to make sure that, parents and teachers, and, students
Not so
know.
much parents, but schools, meaning if there are needs at the school, you might expect the parent to share it with staff people or the principal,
Right.
and then they would forward the information on.
Right, that's what I'm saying, is that, if parents have questions about what's going on with the particular facility, who do they go to? Should
Us.
they go to, well, besides that, but I mean, certainly,
Principals.
what's the proper step of getting it to your ears and eyes,
Yeah.
So it is the facilities needs portal, and again, it comes from the school, but all of these projects have come from that process, and then go through the prioritization process that we do annually. We shared with the board back in the fall, and these are just as we're working our way down the priority, that's how they're coming in. Yes.
If I could share as well, long-range planning also does site visits, and we meet with the principals or assistant principals, and we walk the campuses. So our team, a mighty team of two, we also support the schools in entering some of those requests. So if they don't know how to do it, haven't figured it out, we assist them with getting those things entered.
Just a comment to thank you all for this work. These PREMP and SNAP projects, obviously, in my mind, they have different reasoning, justification, et cetera, like the fencing that you mentioned at Mount Vernon. We don't need kids like running off campus. But just all of these, even for the ones going back a few slides that might just be fit and finish with the paint, carpet, furniture, et cetera, all of this stuff matters, not only because our students and our educators deserve it anyway, but now that the General Assembly has set us up to be even more competitive because they are privatizing public schools, and we have universal vouchers now, more charter schools. We are now in competition with these other options for families. And so this matters and is a good use of our tax dollars, in my opinion, and I just want to thank you for this work.
And we're still going. Tony?
All right, you're up, Tony.
So I'm going to give you a rundown of all the projects in the life cycle department and the last appropriation. So that's the 23-24 appropriation. It is broken down into 4 different sectors. There's HVAC projects, which are a lot larger than just simply HVAC, but that's the main reason for being in the schools, so that's what we'll call them. We have some general construction projects, single system replacement projects, and then roof and envelope projects. So we'll start with the HVAC. We're doing a major HVAC project at Weatherstone Elementary School, where we're replacing HVAC, lights, fire alarm, intercom. All these larger HVAC projects like this also typically include repairing sealant at control joints and around windows, and then painting any handrails, hollow metal, coping, things like that that need to be painted at the time we're at the school. So we're doing a little bit of a facelift as well as solving some HVAC and electrical problems. Turner Creek Elementary School, we're doing a boiler replacement project. That's boilers, pumps, controls. Middle Creek, we're going to do a physical plant and control project. So we're going in and replacing boilers, chillers, cooling tower, pumps, and then DDC controls. As John mentioned, at Butte Quabrina Elementary School, we're partnering with them on a print project, and we're doing the HVAC lighting, fire alarm. We're replacing the roof on the building as well as some control work. Southeast Raleigh High School, we're going to be replacing the chillers, rebuilding the boilers, removing the existing cooling towers, taking care of pumps and plant controls. Dillard Middle School and Elementary School, which they're 2 schools are served by 1 physical plant. We're doing the same thing there that we're doing in Southeast Raleigh. We're replacing those chillers. The boilers are in good shape. We're probably going to rebuild those, taking care of replacing pumps and DDC controls there as well. Fox Road, we had an an issue at Fox Road this year where the existing hydronic piping through the building that serves the water source heat pumps was PVC, and it started failing in some places. And so we're doing a quote-unquote emergency project to go out there and pull the PVC piping out this coming summer and replace it with welded Schedule 40 steel and insulate it so we can avoid the issue in the future. Then you look at the next list of projects there, Austin Ridge, Noose River, Heritage Middle School, East Garner Middle School, Overland Middle School, Millbrook Elementary School, East Wake High School, Carroll Middle School, East Millbrook Middle School, and Cary High School. We're going in and doing chiller replacement projects at all those schools.
The question, what is since Southeast Raleigh also says chillers, and that price tag is significantly more, what is the big cost
So
driver there?
at this list of schools where the price tag is considerably smaller, we're doing chiller replacements.
That's it, okay.
At Southeast Raleigh High School, we're replacing chillers, rebuilding the fire tube boilers out there, replacing pumps, doing controls. We're having to remove the existing cooling towers and their supporting concrete structure.
I got it, okay.
You know, to make space to put air-cooled chillers in out there because the roll-up doors at Southeast Raleigh High School are not tall enough to put new water-cooled chillers in place of the existing water-cooled chillers.
Okay.
So all of these schools that I just mentioned that are chiller replacement projects, we're replacing failing chillers, and we've actually gone ahead and pre-purchased those chillers because the lead time on chillers now is somewhere between 42 and 50 weeks. So yeah, it's a year. So we've gone ahead and pre-purchased the chillers, got the designer under contract. As you can see, everything in dark green is money that's encumbered, which means contracts are in place or they're routing to be in place. And so we can eat up that lead time for those chillers while the designer is doing the design on the project. Hopefully by the time we're able to put that project on the street, bid it, open bids, and get contracts in place, the chillers will be either arriving or soon to arrive so that we can get in, do that project, and get out in a timely manner. The last project on this first list is Package 1 intercom replacements. And so there's 12 schools, I believe, that have an old obsolete intercom system in it. We've broken those into 2 packages. So we've done 6 in Package 1. There'll be a Package 2 that'll come in the next appropriation. And we'll be replacing those. Next slide. The next slide contains the other 3 kinds of projects. So under general construction projects, we're replacing the Cary Elementary School gym floor that has suffered some severe water damage, can't be repaired. So we're replacing that with the current guideline for elementary school activity flooring, which will be the welded vinyl. We're working with John Bevan's group on the Cary High School track. Then we're replacing tracks at Leesville Road Middle School, Westlake Middle School.
Talk about the Cary High School track real quick.
So
since we
we're
heard about it.
going
Are we
to
gonna
come
talk
up
about that at the end?
under new business.
Oh, great.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
So we're replacing the tracks at Leesville Road Middle School, Westlake Middle School, Durant Road Middle School. We're replacing those 3 tracks. We're doing a failing retaining wall at Wake Forest Elementary School that runs perpendicular to Main Street. We're taking that down and replacing it with a new brick retaining wall. And then we're doing the Knightdale tennis courts. The Knightdale tennis court project is considerably less expensive than tennis courts we've done in the past. And that's because we're trying a new system with the Knightdale High School tennis courts where we're not digging up the entire court. We're going in and grinding out where the cracks are at and doing an epoxy fill and then covering it with fiberglass mat and then resurfacing the entire tennis court. It's about 1/5 the cost of a typical tennis court project where you take up fencing, posts, nets, dig up the whole surface, redo the subsurface, etc. We're doing this for 2 reasons. One, Knightdale there's a joint use agreement. Knightdale doesn't have the ability to provide the funding their portion of the funding to do a full tennis court dig up and rebuild. And so we're trying to work with them. We also want to try this because if this gives us a 5-year life, then a standard tennis court is 10 to 15. We can do this repair, and in the long run, it'll be cheaper than digging the court up and building a new tennis court. Okay. So we're exploring that. Under single system replacements, at River Oaks Middle School, Martin Middle School, and Broughton High School, we're doing elevator replacements. They're aging elevators. These projects are taken on in conjunction with consulting with maintenance and operations, asking them which elevators are on their hit list, which ones are the highest in need, and then we take those elevators on as projects. We go and refurbish them, provide new elevator equipment, typically reuse existing lines, redo the car, and provide new controls for them. At Leadmine Elementary School, Rand Road Elementary School, Davis Drive Elementary School, and Davis Drive Middle School, we're replacing aging fire alarm panels. That's simple, kind of self-explanatory. For roof and envelope systems, at Sanderson High School, we're replacing the entire roof on Sanderson High School. That's actually under construction right now. It's about 50% complete. We're trying to get that done as soon as possible because we want to get to work on the Sanderson Gymnasium refurbishment project, where we're redoing floor, the fail bleachers, and some wall painting. We're replacing the canopies at Enloe High School. If you're familiar with that, it's canopies that go between East Campus and West Campus, and then the bus drive canopies. They had the clear canopies over top of them that were starting to frost and discolor. We are replacing all of those with color-matched canopies to the rest of Enloe's metalwork, so they're green. We're replacing a roof at Laurel Park. We're doing a partial roof replacement at Smith Elementary School. We're doing a roof replacement at Northwoods Elementary School in advance of the work that John's going to be doing for failing foundations. And at East Millbrook Middle School, we're going to be doing a roof and envelope project. So that's going to be surface sealing around windows and louvers, and then replacing the roof. Question?
So for Northwoods, it's just the roof at this time?
Yes, at this time, it's just the roof.
Okay.
We would have done it probably in conjunction with the John's department, like we're doing some of these other projects, but we were already way out of the gate on the design on this.
Okay.
And so, since we were that far down the road and they were just getting started, we said, well, we can go ahead and do this project, have the roof replaced, and be out of there.
So the other part is coming?
Correct.
It's just not happening at the same time? Okay.
Next slide, please.
You already did this part.
Okay, and so the last slide here is just, we talked about pre-purchasing chillers, and so this is all the equipment that we pre-purchased. I can go down the list if you want me to, but I think
You already
we're
did
kind
it.
of covered.
Yeah.
What is the lead time on ordering a chiller and receiving a chiller nowadays?
The lead time on chillers, depending on which manufacturer gets the bid, is somewhere between 42 and 50 weeks. So
not much of a
52 weeks
change.
is a year, so even 42 weeks is a better part of a year.
Yeah.
So it's not like it was in the past when we would have failed chillers, 16 weeks. So that was nothing. You could start a project, you could design it, you could bid it, and by the time everything was ready for the chiller was here. That's not the case anymore.
Right.
And that's it. Any other questions?
Questions?
With the Nightdale High School tennis courts, I think it's great that something that's going to be cost saving. What is the determinant that it's successful, and at what point do you go, I'm not a tennis player, so please forgive me if it's like one crack is enough, but if it's unsuccessful, this new process, then are we then going back and doing the full gamut?
There's a process that colleges and universities use, which is pre-tension concrete tennis courts. They are vastly more expensive than the way we do tennis courts, which is asphalt over subbase and then a court finish. So with asphalt tennis courts, you're always going to see cracking. It's just a matter of when are you going to see that cracking. So whether or not this is successful, typically we start seeing major cracking in tennis courts around 10 years. Cracking to a point where you must replace it in order for play to continue, typically around 15 years. So if the cost of doing this is 1/5, 20% of the cost of rebuilding a tennis court, and this solution lasts 5 years, that's 33% the life of the tennis court anyway.
Okay.
So if we get 5 years out of it without major cracking, then I would consider those repairs to be a success.
Has this been done elsewhere? Okay.
This is not a new system, it's just the first time Wake County's trying it.
Got it.
All right.
Good. Fantastic. I think we're done on to new business, and we can go straight into Cary High School questions if you want. I have some, but you can start us off, Ms. Matt.
Yeah, I mean, this was something that we obviously heard from athletes last night, and the changes that are happening. Can you just talk us through the timeline and the why now versus, waiting until summer?
Yeah, I can chime in. So the funding for the stadium lighting is through a grant, an athletic grant. And a grant, part of the requirements of the grant is that the funding be spent by the end of June. So in order for us to be able to have spent the money by the end of June, we really need to have the contractor finish up in May so they can invoice it so we can submit it to finance for the payment. Similar to chillers, but not nearly as bad, the lighting systems have long lead times. So we followed Tony's model, we worked with purchasing, and we bid the lighting system. We're going to buy it, Wake County's going to buy it, we're going to use the grant money to buy it. That will use about half of the money. And then we'll use the other half of the money during the construction process. Now, the time to be able to put the lighting in is going to take 6 to 8 weeks. So in order to be able to do that, to demo what's there and erect the new lighting systems, let the contractor finish the project and bill us their final bill, we need to start on or about April 1st to give us time for that to happen, including any potential weather delays, which is why we're beginning on April 1st. Now, we looked at different ways. Was there a way we could save the field and let the kids still use the field, or could we save portions of the track? Unfortunately, there's open trenching involved. I mean, it's an active construction zone, so it's just not safe for students to be out there using it in order to be able to do the work and complete it within the guises of the grant.
And then as far as finding other facilities or spaces for them, I'm assuming that falls under athletics, to help them facilitate that? Okay.
I want to mention about the grant. I think we got the grant last year, and it could have been used at many, many different schools. That would have presented a headache for us in trying to manage that. We talked down at Code. We all knew that Cary High School was the worst stadium lighting that we had in the district, and so it was a lot easier and more effective to combine all the money and do that one project at one school.
And then with Cary High School undergoing a renovation as part of our 7-year plan.
That's right. And so the thinking is, whatever lights we get now, we use somewhere else on site. Because that
Okay.
site is going to look drastically different.
Right, that's what I'm
Yeah.
curious, as we're doing the way we're having to do that renovation, or we think we are going to have to do that renovation. We're investing that money now on these lights.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a whole different look for that campus.
Okay.
Because we don't have it all there.
Right, okay.
So my concern with this, and this might be a Dr. Taylor process, is Cary is a unique landlocked school, similar to Groton. They don't have practice fields, so they have to find a different field. And are we not providing them with any financial assistance to rent a good field? Because I will say, if I was a varsity player, and I know we try on our middle school fields, but some of our middle school fields
It's not the
are
same.
garbage, to be frank. Or they're just sometimes, and this is why I want the athletic presentation and including the joint use contracts that we have, I think I said for May or something, because we have a lot of that, and they do damage our fields. And so if I was a varsity player and they said, go practice at this middle school, I'd be pretty ticked. And so my problem with this is, it seems like the processes were not adequately assisting, but I don't know the full process. So what I am advocating for, and I know Mr. Swanson, who asked me to do this as well, how can we better assist Carrie and those to find a field and to make sure that they can afford to be on a good field as well? Because you can't.
That's a lot to put on a booster club,
Exactly.
even a very robust booster
Yes.
club.
Okay, I'll jump in if I may.
Yeah.
We can follow up, I talked to the principal last week, we did not talk about this. We can follow up with him and see, typically the schools are aware of other fields and what they can find.
Yeah.
But I have not, John, you probably haven't either had this specific conversation with the school. We can do that this week, see if there's some assistance we can provide. They may have already secured something, we don't know. But typically, they know where the fields are and what's available, so we leave it to them. We'll follow up with them this week.
I really appreciate that.
So Mark, let me ask this question. I really don't know the answer to this. This is just kind of what the student shared with us tonight. One of the comments was if the construction or upgrades will be delayed by 2 weeks, it will allow them to complete their season without any issues involved. I don't know if that's true or not.
I'll let John answer that one. I know this is a tight schedule. If we don't get it installed and spent and invoiced by the end, then we have to eat it. So John, I know you all
It
looked
would
at
be
that.
very, very difficult. We're starting in April, and they're going to need to invoice us toward the end of May in order for us to pay them within the guises of the grant. It's very compressed already. I don't think there's 2 weeks in there that we can take out. I'll certainly look at it again, but I don't believe there is.
And I was going to mention, don't forget that the financial system shuts down at the end of the fiscal year.
Well, yeah, that's,
We've asked the people giving us this grant and explained the situation that, is there any leeway?
Alex, I want to turn to you and ask, but my understanding is no.
That's fine, I just wanna
The
make
payment has
sure.
to be made by the end of June.
Right.
That's when the
It's a
funding
typical
expires.
grant give.
I got you.
Listen,
but it's for the kids.
I know, we just,
Maybe that
you
line
know.
will work on them, I don't know.
We just want parents and students to understand that we have.
Exhausted.
Yeah.
Yes.
If
Well
there's been
said.
local meetings with school staff, from
Right.
our staff.
And so sometimes I will ask a question for the benefit for our parents and students
Yeah.
to know that you guys have done the legwork and that we're not just, dismissing their concerns for something.
And I think, when it's my high school went through a major renovation my senior year, and I think of the things that you miss out on because there isn't this or there isn't that because of construction. And so, if you're an athlete and all of a sudden you can't have your final game on a home track, or if you're, hoping for a scout to come in and I think we all can empathize with that, and I think that's really, to Mr. Hershey's point, what we're saying here. It's not questioning the process as much as trying to better understand it, and really help others understand it as well. But, maybe they'll give us a week or two. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe not, but maybe.
I do want us to do everything in our power to give them a good fields to practice on and play on, for sure. Any other questions on the carry? So the second new business item that I have, and then I'll turn it over or ask my colleagues, something Chris, Chair Haggerty and I have discussed. I mentioned it to Dr. Robinson. One thing that we were talking about doing for Facilities Committee is potentially having the ability to, every other month, kind of go into closed session and get facilities-related safety and security updates. 15 minutes, what's been going on, keep it very, very narrow, because we will have other safety and security meetings that might not have anything to do with a facility itself. But that is something that I think Dr. Taylor, I know I discussed it with Dr. Robinson, and if any colleagues have any thoughts, if that's something we can anticipate trying to do in February, maybe as a test run. Because we do have, the implementation of a lot of things related to safety and security that are strictly facilities related. And so I welcome thoughts.
Thank you.
Sure.
I think the last time we tried this, we ended up making 2 presentations. And that's the only thing. If we could get to a point where we could just do it one time, that would be great. And it seemed like there were more people in the security meeting than there were at facilities, but that would be my
Well,
opinion.
so if we present it as we are going to get an update, and the idea would to be to eliminate doing it a second time, because last time we had a safety and security meeting, we had it for a very specific item, and that rightfully took up the whole agenda and the time we were there, and then, we had a very brief facilities-related update on safety and security. And I know, for instance, Ms. Edmonds right afterwards said, I have a question about something very specific, and I'm not going to mention it in open session here.
We do it in February.
Yeah, that'd be great. And for me, it's kind of an every other month, not an every month thing, but just, in that way, by having it regular, the updates should be shorter by nature. But that is, for Dr. Taylor to kind of give a thumbs up on. So, all right.
Well, that was fast.
Fantastic. Makes me happy. Any other new business? Okay, let me, I get the, go ahead.
Forecast.
Yeah, forecast, thank you. Gotta be out of here at 5, that's my goal every time.
I will be quick. As you probably know, this is a living document. This is a living document that will be on the screen here shortly. And that, so we are constantly changing and updating it. The one thing I would say is for the February 6th Board of Education meeting, that is quite an agenda that's coming up on consent. And the Facilities Committee meeting next month, we're looking to have that February 21st.
21st, yes.
So we have made the change on the living document. What was put out last week, of course, won't have that. The Facilities Committee meetings then change after that in March, and they will be the second Tuesday of the month at 1 p.m. And so we've got those dates changed as well. As Ms. Rory had mentioned, we have added the Trailers 101 refresh for the April meeting. And really, that's the update. If you have any questions, happy to answer.
Questions?
I just noticed that on the February 5th Board of Commissioners meeting, it says assumed, it's nothing is set in stone.
Again, these were dates that pending the change for the new chairman, the committee changes and things like that, the new year, that they were subject to change. So we'll be getting rid of those notes that say assumed.
Is that the one that we get to?
No, we don't normally attend those ones. We do a joint meeting, but I think it's assumed because they haven't formally adopted their calendar yet, so, yeah.
Anything else? Dr. Taylor?
Did you mention anything about long-range facility planning? Like the state document?
For long-range planning, Mr. Strickland and I started that conversation last night, and we will be continuing that conversation before it comes to committee. So, yeah. Anything else? Good to the group? Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
I barely tapped it to start, and I got, I was like, I find it so silly.